Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gabe DeSanto. I'm the president of the Ontario High School Conservative Association, and we are glad that you're able to join us today once again for another great episode of OHSCA interviews. Today, we are glad to have a CPC candidate nominee for Burlington joining us today, Emily Brown. Emily is currently a math professor at the Pilon School of Business at Sheridan College in Mississauga. She is also an advisor in the teacher education program at Niagara University. She also taught math in Calgary, Alberta, and currently she is also on the board of directors at EQAO here in Ontario, which many of you students watching are quite familiar with by this time in high school. Emily is now running for the CPC nomination in the Great Riding of Burlington in the Hamilton area. Welcome, Emily, to the show.
Thank you so much, Gabe. I appreciate your time this morning. This is awesome what you're doing for young conservatives.
Thank you. So we are glad to have you here today, and we always like to start off the show with a question and answer session. And all these questions are asked by our high school members. The first question is from Mackenzie, and Mackenzie asks, what are your plans to help reduce the national debt and eliminate the deficit?
Thanks, Mackenzie, for your question. And that's one of the biggest issues we're facing right now. We have a huge national debt load. We have people who are out of work. We have people who are at risk financially because they've had to take on debt just to get through this crisis. The biggest thing we need to do really is get small and medium businesses back to work. We need to really simplify the tax system for those small and medium businesses. They are the lifeblood of communities. They hire local people. And besides that, we need to get people back to work. We need to get people earning. We need to get people spending. And we need to bring that sense of optimism that we're able to see an economic future. So those two things.
Well, I'm sure as a math teacher in college, you probably see a lot of, even though you may not exactly teach it, I'm sure you've seen a lot of students in economics and all that. And as the next generation, we are going to be the ones that are put with this debt. We're the ones that are gonna have to clean up Justin Trudeau's mess. And I think that with Erin O'Toole's 5-point plan that luckily he announced last week, one of them I think is the recovery of jobs and the deficit. And I think he's going to take a really good approach at it. He even said something that a lot of people are scared about. He said no sudden cuts or major moves like that. And I think that's something great to remember, because going forward, the Conservative Party needs to, they're the ones that will help us. They're the ones that will eliminate the debt and deficit and fix it for the next generation.
Of all the wonderful things that conservatives are known for, fiscal responsibility is the thing that people think of most. And it doesn't mean cutting. It actually means stabilizing. Erin O'Toole has said that we're going to balance the budget within 10 years. You know, that's not an unrealistic problem or solution or assessment. So I really think that that's realistic. Whenever you have a situation of economic upheaval, you have to stabilize first before you move forward. So that plan is an excellent one. One of the things I teach at college is financial math. So the effect of compound interest, the effect of debt. And, you know, my students are often alarmed when I say, well, what would be your, you know, the increase in your payment this month if suddenly the interest rate went from this to this? And then we work those things out together, and they're shocked to see. So we need to have some stability so that people know that they can budget, how to budget, and to be able to have optimism that they're going to be able to recover from this economic crisis.
Well, yeah, I mean, conservatives, like you said, we're really good at fixing it up and balancing budgets. And a lot of people have a unfair viewpoint of us, and they think, oh, all conservatives do are cut. But I think with Erin O'Toole, he knows what he's doing. He's going to get us to the budget, and 10 years is realistic. I mean, we're coming off $1 trillion here. I mean, 10 years is a pretty good amount of time, and I don't think he's going to do any sudden movements like that. I think he's going to get a good team and do what's best for the Canadians. And the next question, Jack asks, as young people, as we interact with our education system very often, what do you think about the great quality of education across Canada?
That's a really good question, Jack. I've taught in Alberta, and again, I've taught in Alberta. I was educated in both places as well. I've had I have degrees from Ontario post-secondary institutions and also from Alberta ones. We are highly ranked as a country in our education system. We have been assessed on international assessments with respect to math, science, and literacy. And we have seen some concerning results with respect to mathematics. And we know, and I know certainly from teaching math for so long, is that it's often a barrier to success professionally and academically. So we do need to think about a national numeracy program so that we can see an increase in numeracy across Canada. I was at a forum with Craig Alexander, who at the time was a TD economic advisor, and he said something alarming or something interesting, and that is that with every point increase in numeracy, you're going to see a corresponding increase in your earning power. And so we need to make sure that everyone is equipped with the skills they need, to make the choices professionally and academically that they want to. I see students who struggle in mathematics all the time. And the frustrating thing is, they see their dream, their Canadian dream to be this or that. And they struggle with the mathematics, and that's the only thing that's really limiting their next move into their future. So.
Well, I know in Ontario, we've seen in the past years, there's been a lot of changes in our education system, and most notably I think the McGuinty government and the Wynne governments, they tried to change the math a little bit, but it really affected a lot of people, including myself. I was in the year that they tried to move over to the discovery math. The discovery math, I'm not sure as a teacher how you felt about it, and I know I've heard mixed reactions from a lot of people, but we were sort of the trial and error phase. So once we got to high school, it was a little different and difficult for us. So now I think as we go on, like you said, trying to fix it up and get people to get their dreams again and go forward and not be held back by anything that has happened in the past.
When I taught in Calgary, I taught in Calgary in a charter school. The curriculum was taught through the lens of science education, and I was a science and math specialist. And inquiry, discovery, they're kind of used interchangeably, but it doesn't mean let students loose. Here, figure this out yourself. Like inquiry and discovery. Inquiry really means giving students big questions to answer. And those big questions have to be answered using the mathematics knowledge that they need to know. So I've always had this mantra, like give them a reason to know what they need to know, right? When I was teaching in grade 6, one of our science units was trees and forests in Alberta. And it's a huge concern. We have the boreal forest. And the question was, can the boreal forest be the lungs of the earth? That was the question. And students had to figure out, what do we need to know to answer that question, right? We need to know how many trees there are in the boreal forest, how much oxygen they produce, how much carbon dioxide would they need to absorb, and the population of the world. So, discovery math and inquiry math, they're not bad in and of itself. They're just misunderstood. And unfortunately, that has given perhaps a bad name for it, but it really is applied mathematics. How do you use it? Yeah, not here. Go figure it out.
Yeah, that's what I think the problem was. I think that there's a lot of miscommunication there was older teachers that traditionally taught the math that was like, here's the books, this is the number, figure it out. And then there were the new teachers that tried to change it up. And I think it was all very confusing. And as a teacher, I'm sure you saw with your colleagues, everybody, well, you were in Alberta, so it was probably a little different, but in Ontario, it changed. And I think that going forward, we need to look at it from a wider perspective and really understand the word discovery and inquiry, like you said.
And I have been involved in the K-12 education sector here in Ontario, and our teachers here do a great job. And what they need to know, perhaps through professional development and again at teacher preparation programs, it is changing. Education is changing. What students need to know is changing. So we all need to work together at all levels, right, in order to improve going forward.
So the next question comes from Jerry, and Jerry asks, how can we How can conservative students battle an indoctrination in school and create a better learning environment where all opinions are respected? And
Yeah, thanks, Shiree. That's a really good question because, we are living in a place where sometimes our ideas and, the things we want to talk about aren't necessarily welcome in conversation. And I think, we learn, and especially, you're in school to learn. We learn by having conversations, by asking questions, by really getting to know others' perspectives, right? Students are smart. They know that they can make their own decisions and make their own thoughts about it, but they really need to have all the information to do that, right? When I was teaching in Alberta and teaching science, I always had a really environmental focus on my science lessons. Like, here we are as young people. How are we impacting the planet, and how can we mitigate any concerns or damage that we may be doing to the planet? And I remember my parents, I taught 3 groups of students for 3 years in a row. So my parents really became, my family, as did my students. And they would say, okay, what are we saving this year? What's happening in the planet that we're saving? So I went from grade 5 teaching about wetlands and electricity. And at that age, I had them do their environmental footprint. How are you impacting the planet? Are you walking to school? Or is your mom driving you? Are you using recyclable things in your lunch? All of those things, right? And then grade 6, as I said, we studied trees and forests, and we looked at the impact in Alberta on oil sands and the recovery of oil sands operations, and how that was impacting water and trees. And we got to talk to people. That was one of the biggest things we got to do, was talk to experts who would explain what's happening. We had environmentalists coming in, and we have balance of discussions and opinions. And then the students did their own research, and they had, their own debates and their own discussions. And they started to learn for themselves, right? Many of my students' parents were actually in the oil and gas sector. So we could have also, parent expertise. In grade 7, we looked at ecosystems and interactions, which
I think we
really
did
is.
too here in Ontario. I think I
Yeah,
remember that too.
it really is about your impact, and things that we don't even think about, like golf courses and putting fertilizer and pesticides down. We did field trips where we went down the Bow River, and we sampled water upstream of the golf course and downstream of the golf course. We looked around the water treatment center and did a whole kind of couple hours of understanding what the water treatment does. And, we really understood the impact between what we do as humans and what happens to the fish, to the animals, the small animals, bioaccumulation, where, you put some poison down to kill some, creature in your backyard because it's digging your garden. And the next thing you know, you have owls that are dying, inexplicably, because they're accumulating those toxins in their body. So just really, getting all your perspectives, doing your own research, talking to people and trying to understand, that's how we can make our own decisions. And that's how you, young people, are going to end up being in a position where you're making some of the decisions for the country.
Well, I mean, as we saw in the convention, we got a little bit of a bad rap from people who didn't look at the whole thing about the environment. And
Yes.
we saw, and I'm sure you've seen us on Twitter, and you've seen a lot of other people on Twitter trying to
Mhm.
battle back against the major media that isn't showing the whole thing. They're saying, oh, conservatives deny climate change, whereas that's not actually the thing. It was just
Mhm.
a change in wording in the policy, and Erin O'Toole has pledged to take a big stance on climate change. And as the next leaders, and as conservatives, we recognize that climate change is important, and we need to fight it and protect our world. And I mean, I feel a lot of, like, say, for example, the Liberal government, they believe that a tax is the only way we can change it.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm sure you've seen with your students and with a lot of discussions with other people, there's more than just a tax to be the solution. And
Yeah.
as the environment, we need to put forward a plan, and I think Aaron O'Toole can do that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Gabe. 2 words, were picked out, or one sentence was picked out of that policy suggestion. And I actually got a message from a friend in Calgary saying, "Are you really going to run for this party?" And I explained to her, yes, I really am going to run for this party, because we have ideas outside of a carbon tax to help, improve our environment. Nobody's denying that climate change is real. We see that. We see, in Alberta, for example, we see the glaciers melting. Here we see more flooding. We see more extreme weathers around the world. We know that the climate is changing, and we know that humans in many ways are having an impact on that. What we do know, however, is that our behavior doesn't change simply because we're paying more for something. I can see now in the last year of the pandemic where, we're not eating in restaurants, but we're supporting local businesses by taking out. And, you look at the takeout containers that you get, we have styrofoam. Even if we have recyclable paper, which many of our local establishments that I support use, we still have to imagine that that came from a tree, that came from a greenhouse gas absorbing tree. And now we're, putting our salad and our meal in it, and then we're recycling it, right? People may suggest electric vehicles, but don't really understand the end-to-end process in order to make an environmentally friendly vehicle. When you're looking at mining metals that you're going to need for the battery and where those things come from. And I just read just recently with respect to emissions that China actually emits in a month what Canada emits in a year and a half. So while we have to do our own part, and I think one of the best things we can do is incentivize greenhouse gas emission reductions in those places where they stand out, for example. And we also have to incentivize innovation. So what new technologies are in development that we can support that is going to see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the ways that we live our daily lives, right? We can't change what the rest of the world is doing. We could, sanction products from China where they're the heaviest polluters on the planet. We can certainly do that and say, well, we're not going to bring your products into Canada until you have a cleaner environmental record. But carbon tax is not going to help. I was talking to a friend in Saskatchewan yesterday. There was a farmer on the news out there who said this new carbon tax rise on April 1st to $40 a ton will actually increase this farmer's costs by $12.75 per acre. So that he's not going to absorb that cost. He's passing that cost down. And the cost of transporting his agricultural product down will go up. So the consumer is going to feel it. And at the end of when we're saying, well, the Liberals are going to have $170 a ton price on carbon, that will increase his cost by $40 an acre. So we have to think of better ways than just taxing our way out of it. It will not change our behavior.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between taxing you because there's an option and just taxing you. Like, there's no real option. All our houses have, basically, a lot of houses have gas furnaces, and there's no real other option. There's not a lot of hydrogen technology yet or electric technology. And I think that as we go forward, we need to remember that, wait a minute, they're charging us on something we don't have an option about. So we need to really take another step forward in a different type of plan. And that kind of bleeds into our next question. And we were talking about Aaron O'Toole's plan and the way that people perceive our party is, what do you think our Conservative Party of Canada can do to attract more traditionally left-wing voters to vote for us and see that the Conservative Party is a better option than the Liberal Party or the New Democrats or the Green Party or another party?
Yeah, well, I think, Conservatives are traditionally going to remain conservatives. I've been a lifelong conservative. And I know a lot of people who are in that at midstream where they really do look at the issues of the day, or they look at the candidate and, the traditional swing voters, if you will. So I have three things that concern me, my top three really, with the country. And of course, we've talked about the economy, so that's one thing. The second thing is around public safety and the difference between the Conservative Party plan and the Liberal Party action, or Liberal government action, and also around our sort of international reputation. So I feel that we've kind of covered the economy. We want people back to work. We want to support small and medium manufacturers and businesses. We want affordability. We want people to be able to be hopeful and have a good economic future. As far as public safety, we've seen a steady rise in crime. We have smuggling across the border. We have gangs, criminals. We have human trafficking, which has become a huge issue. And in Burlington here, for example, I say we sit on the crime corridor, all the way through from the Niagara region, from the border, across. We have all the 4 series highways that are accessible quickly here from Burlington, through to the GTA and up to to Brampton and the airport, right? So we need to be focusing on public safety so that, when we have a place to live and when we feel secure, that's when the country is better. And currently, the Liberal Party is introducing bills that will, add another layer of legislation onto, lawful Canadians, and they're reducing sentences and, really making it softer on crime. And we can't do that anymore. We all want a safer Canada. We all want to walk down our street and not feel that we have to be looking over our shoulder. Interestingly, yesterday, the Toronto Police Department has just announced that they're going to make public all of their crime statistics, and they have put that online, everything from 2004 to today, so that they can actually see the trends in different communities. And so, we can actually make some difference in the root causes. Why do people choose crime? Because they don't have a sense of hope, because they don't have a sense of community, right? And I think if we can appeal to those people who may vote for another party by saying, we want the same things that you want, and your party's not offering that. They're not offering public safety measures, right? Mm-hmm. International reputation. That's my father fought in the Second World War. He was a career military man. He fought for the integrity and the reputation of Canada, and we have had a brilliant reputation for peacekeeping and for supporting, those who are less able to support themselves. We've always been the heroes, right? And I want to make sure that Canada maintains that reputation, and that we are a place of security, a place that where people will help other nations, where people are kind, right? And where we're not seen as countries that are going off, and a country that's going off and taking vaccines from developing nations. That's not who we are.
Yeah, well, as Canada, we have sort of a declining reputation on the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
You see India, once when Trudeau went a couple of years ago, he made us a laughing stock there. And mm-hmm. now we're taking vaccines from third world countries. And mm-hmm. Even from the States, we're taking vaccines from the States. Mm-hmm. President Biden's doing an amazing job at rolling out the vaccine. And then we have Justin Trudeau here, who's just there, and we're not getting anything. And then now we're taking vaccines from the president in the States, who offered them to us, and we have to give them back eventually, I think. But now we're taking things, and then we have a bunch of people around the world who just see Canada as a laughingstock who needs help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've lived, worked, studied, traveled all around the world and across Canada. So I tend to also look at and listen to international news. And when we see international news, coming from Australia, coming from the UK, coming from the Netherlands, where, we are in the bad press and on the front pages of their news, that's concerning. It's not heralding us as a wonderful nation based on what our Liberal government is doing right now. it's criticizing our actions. It's criticizing our actions around human rights with the vote to declare the Uyghur genocide a genocide. That was what struck me most recently.
It was
That
very
it's
embarrassing. It was very
awful.
embarrassing that Trudeau and his cabinet just said, nope, we're not voting, we're abstaining. And it was very, I found that was a joke. Like,
Yeah,
so many countries were saying, wow, I can't believe that the Prime
yeah.
Minister of Canada is basically denying that there's a
Mm.
genocide going on. I mean,
It was so disheartening, Gabe. You know, you think about families, they're just trying to live a life that they deserve. We have women and children who are suffering. And, you know, for whatever reason, the Liberal government is not standing up to China. In fact, I just, yesterday on BBC, it was announced that the Chinese government is sanctioning British MPs. And today I just read that they're now sanctioning Canadian MPs, Michael Chong specifically.
yeah.
So at some point, we have to say, you know, environmental record, human rights record, democratic record. We have, you know,
And they're,
Michael Spavor and Michael
Mhm.
Kovrig stuck over there, you know, without proper legal counsel, without consular support on a regular basis. I fear for those men's lives. This is, you know, what are we doing?
And I think we need to really just take a tough stance. And I think that
Hmm.
as the Conservative Party and Aaron O'Toole, he's taking a strong stance on China, and I think he will if he
Mm-hmm.
becomes Prime Minister. Before
Okay.
we end, I'd like to always have a casual, friendly wrap up where we talk about one thing, one piece of advice, one thing that you would tell us young conservatives
Mm.
to do, to do in order to get more involved in our politics and to get more involved in our great nation and our systems and
Okay.
elections.
Right. So I started as a young person like you, being involved in the democratic process as a poll clerk, as a returning officer, helping on campaigns. So what you're doing now, Gabe, is absolutely wonderful. You are so involved. You're getting others involved. You're speaking to that young generation in ways that they listen through YouTube videos and through Twitter, and that's brilliant. When you look at Pierre Poilievre's following of 72,000 people on YouTube, that's where people go for their information. So, you know, get involved, door knock, understand the issues, get to know your governments at all levels. You know, when I was teaching and we would teach civics, you know, we had municipal elections, provincial elections, federal. We were lucky when we were teaching that in a year when there was an election because we could bring candidates in and ask them questions. Be a part of it. In Calgary, there was what was called a mayor's youth council, and I believe that that exists in other cities, of course. So get involved at the smaller level, and then get involved at the bigger level. You know, exert your sphere of influence. You have a lot to say and a lot of good ideas. And as you said earlier, you know, you're going to be the ones that are really getting us out of this. You know, this economic mess right now, and you know, you're the future. So
I mean, as on an ending note, I mean, we have uh, Aaron O'Toole is saying secure the future, and I think
mhm,
that's something we need to
I
remember.
love that. Yeah,
And I think that like that's one of our better slogans that we've had for a while. I think that'll
yeah,
be the slogan for the election, probably. That's his recovery plan name.
yeah.
And I think that we need to end off on that. We'll end off on
Mhm.
that today, but we need to remember that we are the future and we will secure the future, and your
Absolutely.
students and
And I've worked to support, educate, nurture that future
Mhm.
generation. And you know, we're going to be handing the torch to you. So do your best, get involved just like you are. And thank you, Gabe, very much.
Well, thank you, Emily, for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we wish you well in your future and your campaign to become the nominee and become possibly the candidate in Burlington for the Conservative Party of Canada. We really wish you well. An election's probably going to come soon, federal budget, April 19th. That
Yes.
will probably be a confidence motion. So
Yes, I believe
don't
so.
quote me on that, but I'm sure we'll be going to an election very soon in the next couple months by the summer or fall. And that is it. We really hope you enjoyed today's interview. You can look for more videos coming soon. Make sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook accounts at Ontario HS Cons for more great content and for info about this interview and our next interview. Make sure to look at our website at ontariohsconservatives.org to learn everything about us. That is where we will be updating a lot of things after the Easter weekend. Actually, we're going to be having a big bunch of new content coming out, and we're going to reschedule all our content and have content for you almost every day of the week, so that'll be great. And make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell if you like this video so you can never miss a video. We hope to see you all soon. Have a good day.